This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, we are calling the meeting to order at 5:30 p.m. As the governor has extended the executive order that still allows us to conduct the meeting with representatives attending virtually. I am here physically at the village office as well as Seth Gromwall. Try to get that little thing off of there. Okay, we've got Mike, Jeremy. Okay, does anybody have any conflicts of interest to disclose? Any changes to the agenda? A motion to approve the agenda.
Jeremy Graham will make the motion.
Stan Melogranda seconds.
Okay, approval on the agenda. Jeremy,
Yes.
Stan,
Yes.
and Mike is a yes. Do I have a motion to approve the Public Works minutes from March the 1st?
Stan Melogranda will make that motion.
Jeremy Graham will second.
Any questions, comments, clarifications, or corrections? Hearing none, roll call vote. Stan?
Yes.
Jeremy?
Yes.
And Mike is a yes. Next item, we have public comment, and Denise Sparacino has asked to address the committee. Go ahead, Denise.
Thank you, guys. So Keep Northern Illinois Beautiful every year has a community cleanup in conjunction with the Great American Cleanup, a nationwide program. And I was thinking that it would be nice to have our own community cleanup in conjunction with KNIBS. And I went as far as contacting Pam Osborne, who is the executive director there, and she would love us to put something together. And so talking to the Historical Society board, we'd like to host that to where we could send out information for the community to register through us. We would be the pickup site for the gloves, the vests, the pickers, and the garbage bags, which would be provided by free of charge from KNIB. And then we would coordinate that, get the volunteers to check in at the town hall. But I was wondering if the village could help with, once the organizations, maybe, scouts, different school groups, maybe Key Club, and that might, need some volunteer hours, so that would help them as well. So what I was wondering, what the village could maybe help out with is either provide a dumpster, or if these bags were, I'm not sure if they're a specific color to where they could be left at, like an end of a road or something, and then Public Works could pick them up, something like that. If you guys wanted to, get involved too, and we could put that out in the press release, or, information also. Or if you have a better idea.
And this is Saturday the 25th?
April 24th, I believe, is the date. And it'll be, so my thought is that the the participants would check in like from 8 to 8:30, get their gear, and then from like 9 to noon, do the cleanup, and then they would return the pickers and the vest that I could return to KNIB. So it would just be that one day, you know, for the morning essentially. And then my question too is if you know, people came across things that were maybe, you know, I don't know, out of the ordinary, you know, of bottles and, you know, paper and stuff, say there was batteries or, you know, maybe paint cans or something, you know, a little bit more toxic or dangerous, if there is somebody, you know, that they could call at the village, or, you know, because they would, I would be instructing people not to pick up that kind of stuff, to leave it, but we would want to notify somebody that it's there in case, you know, somebody would want to come and actually pick it up and get rid of it.
I know Public Works has frequently assisted with things like this for community service for the you know, schools and everything else. And you know, Chad and I did talk a little bit about it. Obviously, the easiest thing for us to do is like they've done in Rockford, is if the bags are, you know, after all the garbage and everything is set up, to be set a couple feet back off the roadway, and Public Works could, you know, probably swing by and grab that. But Chad, relative to some of the other household hazardous waste type of stuff, is there any way in particular you've dealt with that in the past?
We've never done a collection of the hazardous household waste. People got to do their own. We do have some measures, but we don't advertise to pick it up. So if they find it, it'll just have to get set next to the dumpster by the crews, and we'll have to sort through it. It's never good. We just got to take it. Batteries and stuff, you can go to Neblox, they'll take those. The paint cans, it all depends on what's going on at Rock River Rec it's not part of Rock River Rec, but there's a pickup crew there that does paint cans. We deal with it through a lot of different avenues because we pick up every day, but that stuff will just have to get separated like they always do.
Yeah, I think, Denise, where it would be probably going is, you know, obviously if it's sitting alongside the road already, it's something that the village is normally having to contend with. We probably would not want to get the communication out that residents that have this stuff laying around all start commingling it with there, because again, as Chad indicated, in non-COVID timeframe on Saturday mornings, there is a household hazardous waste collection site over by Rock River Reclamation. And it does provide you know, residents the ability to dispose of things like that. I don't think the village wants to incur all of that thing there, but obviously in the process of picking up trash and so forth that you're putting in the bags, you know, if something happened to be there, like a battery or a paint can or whatever, as Chad indicated, probably put it in adjacent to one of those bags, and you know, the village will deal with it the best that we could. But we, you know, again, we don't want to get the communication out that we're going to be picking all this stuff up at individual residents' homes.
Oh, no. Yeah. And I wouldn't want people to be throwing that in their bags, or, you know, leaving things out thinking that the village is going to pick it up. This is strictly, you know, groups and individuals picking up trash along the road, and what happens if they find something. You know, for you know, people checking in and asking that question, I would just tell them to leave it, and then maybe just, you know, let me know or somebody know that here's what we found on what street, and then, you know, either the township or the village, if it's in the village, could deal with it. The other question too was, you said that you guys pick up pretty regularly, so would you have areas that maybe you would like these groups or individuals to concentrate on, like the parks or the prairie path, the bike path, or if they're not doing their own neighborhoods?
What I would probably suggest, Chad, if you and Jimmy want to talk about that and then figure out where you can best use the help, and then we can probably communicate back to Denise of where to try, you know, obviously prioritize them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and depending on how many people that she's able to get to participate, then we can kind of point them in the directions that would help us the best.
Yeah, just to throw in, like we talked about, Mike, we do this every year with the Senior Service Day. We do it internally. And when we've had the Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, or other organizations volunteer for this outside of the KNIB event, we already have laminated maps with zones. So folks can just pick their zone and could get directed there if they didn't have a priority. And it's spelled out pretty clearly. We had the maps color coded. So it's pretty simple. Anybody could pick their own zone or pick up anywhere. And likewise, like we talked about, the village involvement. There is the 5-yard dumpster that we own, is emptied every Friday. It's right down at the Public Works facility outside of the gate by the Lighted Diamond, 600 West Soper. And I do know the township provides a 20-yard dumpster for the Boy Scouts. He usually has it in right. As a matter of fact, he spoke to us this morning. I can't speak for the township being that it would be for public use, but I know he opens it up for the Boy Scouts to load the 20-yarder. And like I said, our 5-yarder will be emptied on Friday. It'll be sitting there. So that could be a directive where folks could go. And, you know, the only other thing, I guess Kelly could reach out perhaps to Gills and see if they could provide one at a convenient spot like the police garage. That would be easy for everybody to get to. And that would also keep folks from dumping things that they normally wouldn't dump, being right in that location. So I don't know that could happen. I know we don't have a budget to spend money on it, but since Gills is our contractor, maybe they would participate with a 10 or 15-yard dumpster for the one-day event. As far as the bags, the only thing we would need to know is if they're a colored bag, that would be the best thing. Then you could say any bags associated with the cleanup event can be put at any municipal pole, speed limit, stop sign. As long as they're stacked off the roadway, we'll pick them up on Monday, weather permitting.
Historically, Keep Northern Illinois Beautiful has distributed yellow bags historically. So if they follow their suit, I would expect that's probably what it'll be. So they're very identifiable for you.
And
That's
the only
kind of what I was.
I did point out that we have a lot going on those dates. We will not be participating during that day. Our work staff will not be doing something on that Saturday. We'll pick up on Monday through Friday.
And that would be great.
We'll be there, but it's a non-issue.
Denise, what's a good number to reach you at?
815-222-9994.
So what does you kind of staff up or whatever, Chad will have that number or whatever, and then he can kind of maybe touch base with you on what, areas that we can use the most help, whatever, and he'll get a copy of that map and so forth to you, so that as you kind of staff up your group and know where to kind of route the folks at.
That sounds great. Yeah, thank you guys.
Well, we appreciate what you're doing there, because obviously if it's not being done by the volunteers, the Public Works has ended up doing a lot of it themselves or through other resources. So I think it's a win-win for the community.
Mike, is it going to be requested of Kelly to contact Gills or not? I just wanted to make sure that if that's to be done, somebody's doing it.
Get inquiry to see whether that's something they can assist with, and then we can guide the group accordingly.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions for Denise? Okay, if not, we'll move along. Denise, you're welcome to sit on and listen if you're interested, or if you need to go, that's quite all right as well too.
All right, I think I'll go. Thank you guys so much, and just keep me posted what what you need from me or anything. So thanks so much.
Thanks for the support.
You bet. Bye.
Okay, Sally distributed to everybody the updated construction funding report. Also, she attached on there a listing of the payments made regarding the hail damage and so forth. I didn't see a great deal of updates on that from when we talked about it last month. So if you got any comments to make on that, or we can just move along.
The only comment I'll make is in regarding construction is that we did receive the $34,000 payment from the Rebuild Illinois bond grant. So those payments are right on schedule.
Okay, thank you for that update. Any questions for Sally? Okay, Chad, anything to share regarding staffing?
Well, staffing, everything's going good. Just a precursor for this committee to know that we will be looking to utilize our public works part-time staffers a little bit heavier with the acquisition of that new property. There's some cleanup that's got to get going right away. So we're going to engage leverage our budget to use the hours that we have available to get that area shaped up as quickly as we can.
Okay, thank you. Any progress relative to the generator?
It has been ordered. It was ordered the week it was approved. We were told it's more than likely a 6-week delivery date to the vendor on that item, and then a 14 business day schedule, planned schedule. So we really didn't anticipate getting it installed before May. So we'll just keep the committee and the rest of the folks abreast of the progress, but it's going to happen.
Okay, thank you for the update. And I guess I'll let you, Chad, and Seth arm wrestle on water rate study.
I'll just segue in the fact that we had done a water rate study in 2011 with the intent of getting our finances in proper order for debt obligation and operation and maintenance of the water system and the sewer debts. There was a lot of speculation when that happened with our intergovernmental agreement with the RWRD, unknowns regarding interest rates and loan amounts through IPA revolving loan and a few other ancillary items. Since that time, we've done certain cash payments, certain capital improvement projects, in addition to the sewer debts, water tower painting, water tower construction, well rehabs, things of that nature. The short synopsis is that study was to take us through 2021, and our ordinance was drafted in such a way that it would expire in 2021. So it has come to our attention that it very well may be time for the rate study to be updated. The mayor has asked that I talk with Fair Graham and we get a proposal. We have one version of the proposal as Seth and I thought to see fit. Discussion with the mayor was he would like it to be discussed at committee and then also brought to the full board. If the committee chooses to move on this exact proposal, Seth can elaborate upon it, and I'll add to it if needed. If there's more discussion or an alteration of this proposal, we would need to request that of Seth. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Seth to identify his proposal and see the way he felt it was best proposed to us as our discussions carried it over.
There's probably not a whole lot that to dive into here, other than the fact that this water rate study proposal is essentially dives into the not only the financials related to the water system, but also the usage, cost, O&M, taking a look at what you guys currently are seeing for O&M costs, as well as revenues, and then looking at the capital improvement plans as far as projects that maybe Chad or has in mind, or other board members or whatever. And just kind of planning for what those costs look like in the future, and then how your rate structure currently stacks up as far as accommodating those future improvements that you need, whether that be water main loopings, new well houses, tower rehabs. I don't believe that we have any of those. I'm just throwing out typical, water infrastructure projects. Basically, we'll look at that, kind of see how your current rate structure lines up, consider all of the existing debt service payments you have with RWRD, et cetera, and then make a recommendation to you as far as what your structure should look like for the next however many years, 10 years typically, before you really reconsider and adjust based on an updated CIP plan.
And I haven't scanned this proposal yet, but does that also take into consideration what other similar municipalities are collecting for services? Is that part of the scope?
Collecting for services, meaning just like,
How do we match up? Are we higher than the neighboring communities? Are we lower?
yeah, we've got information on adjacent communities to see, how you kind of line up. We can, include that as, for reference purposes.
Would that also include situations where, even though we don't have the ability to dissect each and every one's financial statements or whatever, but if there's other outside funding mechanisms, whether they're through property taxes or through some type of a bonding issue or whatever, will that surface as well?
Probably what we would really strictly look at would be, what are other communities' base rates? What are their usage rates? If we're aware of any other major loans that they may have that would be impacting, their rates being higher, that would be kind of the extent of that. We wouldn't really take an in-depth look at each of the, any of the adjacent communities there. Obviously, if you wanted us to, we could, I'm sure, but that would be, more of an additional services type of item there. And you'll see in the proposal that we did include some time to sit down with Chad and whoever else wants to be involved in the conversation to discuss, an updated CIP plan, because to my knowledge, that plan has not been updated in quite a few years. And currently, the current CIP plan doesn't account for projects that have already been completed or, similarly put off.
Would this cost have been considered in the budgeting process?
I see Sally's saying no, but it's part of the water upgrade, as I've stated before, that instead of a water main project, it would have been deemed that we were doing water meters and or this. We did throw all the eggs in the basket of the hopes of getting the grant. So if the grant was awarded this year, that would make it, these funds would not have been directly available. That's where the difference is. We did not plan for a capital improvement project outside of the anticipated and hoped for CDAP grant. However, if that CDAP grant did not come to fruition and we could not do that project, this would be part of the water upgrades budget.
Hey, Chad, what was the account number for that? Do you happen to know? I'm looking through all the paperwork here. I just didn't know if you knew it.
I do not have it off the top of my head. It's water upgrade.
It's 5144542.
Is that something that's essential at this point in time? Or do we have any wiggle room on the timing for it? I guess either somebody's gonna have to do it on the outside, or we're gonna have to run some numbers to make sure exactly where we stand relative to budgets ongoing.
Chad, I don't know this. I guess the one thing that I don't know what your time frame looks like or what you kind of have planned. It typically does take a decent amount of time to, complete the study in a manner that's acceptable to the board, because typically when we put these together, the board will review, say, I want you to change this, this, and this, and this, and then, go through a couple iterations and come back. And then it takes some time to actually get that approved.
You're talking about the proposal end or the final study?
I'm talking the rate study, getting it finalized and to a point where it's acceptable to the board, and then actually getting something approved as far as a new rate ordinance. And so if you wanted to get it approved and in place for 2022, the new rates, then there would be some lead time associated with that. Just,
So Mary, even though we have an existing ordinance that carries us through 2021, is there a requirement to have this study, or have we felt that our rates were consistent with our cost of providing service, that we can continue on with those rates, or do we need to have a rate study if we made a decision that we thought we needed to raise the rates for our services?
From my recollection, the only thing that we're required to do is to publish our rates, not necessarily that we have to have a rate study to go along with it. We use that for a different purpose. I'd have to look back at the ordinance, and if memory serves me correctly, I think that was an ordinance, and Seth, correct me if I'm wrong, that was kind of a stock ordinance that was prepared by Fair Graham. I don't remember preparing it, but I could be wrong.
yeah, I guess that probably would have been before my time, so I don't remember that much, but
Yeah,
the,
I'll have to look back and see, but I don't think it's required that we have to have an ordinance in order to continue with our rates.
yeah, the only way it would be a requirement is if you plan to increase.
I personally think that there's some things we probably need to do a little bit of homework before I think I would be personally prepared to bring this to the board for an overall approval. So I guess I would recommend that we do a little bit of a due diligence between now and the next meeting, so we can talk intelligently about this at the next Public Works Committee meeting, and then possibly bring it to the board in the May meeting as opposed to April.
I have a comment about the finance. If we were to use the water upgrade line item and we added that into what we're the maximum that we're expected to pay for that grant, we would be at 102%. So it would be within our appropriation amount. And I know that that's not, you still want to do things properly, but we would be able to do it if the board really wanted to. The money is there.
And also the logistics now of already being April and the grant not being awarded yet, it would probably be 3 months before that project started if we were awarded tomorrow. So that money wouldn't be all used up. And then to back up just 1 second about the ordinance versus the study, I do believe, due to our criteria for the IPA revolving loan that we have to keep an ordinance for the rate, but that doesn't mean you have to do a study. A study is by choice. I'm sure there's language for the IPA revolving loan that says you had to do your due diligence and prove that your rates were competent and capable of paying back the loan, which we did at the time of loan receipt. But I believe we have to keep ordinances current for as long as we have the IEPA revolving loan. That's what I believe is one of our limiting factors here. But again, I agree with Seth. We have some time. I do think it's probably going to be, even if this was passed at the April meeting, it would be 3 or 4 meetings before it was completed, just off of the time and the back and forth and the data collection that has to happen. Just putting that out there to answer some of Mike's questions that we had kind of talked about before. So, and not opposed either. I don't know if the committee had full receipt of the document. Is it attached to tonight's meeting? I thought it was.
Are you talking about the proposal?
Yes.
The proposal, you forwarded that right before the meeting that I sent.
Right. That was a panic effort because I thought I had sent it to Kelly previously to have attached for the meeting documents. And
I don't recall seeing it, so unless we are in a crisis situation,
no rush.
I would prefer that now that you put it in the hands of the committee, that we have a chance to, take a few minutes to look at it or whatever and revisit this at the May meeting for board consideration in May.
That's not a problem for me. Is it for you, Seth?
No. I mean, it's not a problem for me.
And Chad, do you have handy that ordinance in 2011's number? I can look it up, but if you have it right there, I'll take it.
It's in an email chain. I don't have it right in front of myself.
Okay, I'll look it up.
So if everybody can just go ahead and take a few minutes to read that proposal, become a little bit more knowledgeable on it, so that way there we can, I just don't feel comfortable bringing something to the board that I don't really understand quite yet. And we're not under any, urgency. Obviously, if we want to get a new ordinance written by the end of the year, we don't want to kick this can down the road for 3 or 4 months, but I don't think 1 month is going to significantly hinder us.
Yeah, because that means after 4 months, we should have it totally done by September, which would still be plenty of time.
Okay, any other questions or comments on that subject? Okay, item 11, we've got 2 invoices for JP Electric. One exceeds the authority of myself. The other one has the ability for me to approve it. These just kind of came up here recently, but the first one basically is a $5,830 invoice that goes back to the November timeframe. It appears that we may not have received this in November, and the vendor did not do very thorough follow-up on making us aware that we had an outstanding invoice that goes back to them. But basically, this invoice is predominantly for doing a lot of repairs and upgrades to some of the street lighting at the north end of town over towards, what do they call it, McDonald's and in that area. So, Chad indicated that from his point of view, that the work performed is reasonable. A lot of this was an accumulation over, several different repairs that the vendor kind of accumulated all in one invoice. Probably could have, done some partial invoicing as work was being done to hold that amount down a little bit. But Sally, did you send that directly to me, or did you send it out to the committee as well?
to the whole committee.
Okay, so anybody have a chance to review that invoice? Anybody have any concerns?
So I had no concerns for the invoice. I only have one invoice though. The one for 5830, the 16 electrical, the one that you're discussing right now. I don't remember seeing the other one.
I think Sally might have just sent the other one to me directly just because it exceeded Scott's $1,500 approval limit, looking for my approval. So that one you probably did not see.
Okay, nope, in that case, I have everything and it looks good to me.
So I would like to entertain a motion to approve the $5,830.25 invoice number 111020-0019.
Jeremy Grimm will make that motion.
Stan Melogranda will second.
Sally, do you know what account number that should be billed to?
I was just gonna ask Chad and Jim if that should come from street maintenance, 514.
Yes.
Okay,
So the number would be 0142514.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
And this is being recommended for board approval, correct? Correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it exceeds my $5,000 limit, so I'm just consensus of this committee to take it to the board.
Okay, just wanted to make sure because the way that the motion was originally worded, it sounded like the committee was approving it.
That was probably my bad sentence structure. So thank you for correcting. Any questions or comments? Okay, those in favor, Jeremy,
Yes.
Stan,
Yes.
Mike is a yes. And then the only other one which you guys did not see is a recent invoice for $1,700 and change. Invoice is dated March the 25th of 2021, and so it's some additional work over tying all of the public works buildings into the electrical grid. Chad, does that complete that work on that particular project, or is there any outstanding work still to be done?
The landing of the wire for that project is yet to be done. That was the underground conduit to get everything landed. We're waiting for the wire to show up, and that will get the full public works building on generator backup and reduce 2 more electrical services on an older line. So there's one last step to go.
What line item should that come out of?
That one, we're going building maintenance.
Do you know what that is off the top of your head, Sally?
Yes, it's 0142. I lost it. 511.
Okay, that one is in my authority limits. I'm going to go ahead and approve that invoice. I will send an email to Sally with my approval on it, so we've got all the i's dotted and t's crossed on
Thank you.
it. Okay, item number 12, approval of land grant use with the village portion of the Highlands development. Ed, can you bring everybody up to speed on that, please?
So with the recent acquisition of the Highlands development, I brought to the attention, well, first of all, we're going to be having a meeting later this month or early next month regarding some of the uses, but the fact of the matter is a large portion of that property, 25 acres more or less, has stayed, well, after it didn't develop, it went back to an agricultural use. So the property has to be maintained, and it's not in what you would call a mobile state. And some information that I had shared with village president was that the previous developer had received certain letters from the Spring Water Conservation District with the fact that parts of it hadn't been properly maintained. As we're all aware, due to the acquisition of the property, none of it was maintained. And to please this committee, I use this time to give you the information that previous agricultural uses of that property led to a lot of damage of village-owned infrastructure, fire hydrants, water valve boxes, curb and gutter, sidewalk, and things of the like, including road service. So the land is not really true farmland. The black dirt was stripped, which is common practice for development. The black dirt was piled. So there's a pile of black dirt out there, but there has been agricultural use of 25 of the acres, most of which is not platted, not the platted parcels. So discussions with village president were that we would like to talk to a local farmer that would have interest to go ahead and get crops in it. Then it's considered vegetated by the Saltwater Conservation District, and you won't get written up for runoff and erosion type consequences. And one of the local farmers that we reached out to is willing to take on the duty, the burden of mowing the land that cannot be farmed and maintaining it, and then farming the 25 acres more or less, and offering a lump sum payment per year. The village president thought that would be favorable. We did receive a rental agreement as proposed by the local farming entity. It is something that's time sensitive, in the fact that if somebody does want to farm it and get a yield, it hasn't been well maintained, so it hasn't received fertilizer, proper tillage, and things like that. This particular local renter would do those things, and we have spoken with them with a plan that we would progressively like to see it get to a point, if it began to develop, it could be quickly taken out of farm production and be mowable. Right now, it's basically been corn crops, so it's got deep ruts, varying contours and elevations, and not a really smooth surface. So this particular farmer is willing to rotate the crops in such a manner that within 3 years, it would be something that could be mowed due to his farming practice, doing beans, most likely a wheat, and then possibly alfalfa or a haylage style of crop, of which that time it would be something that we could rough mow with our equipment, especially if it were to change as development does, or if our rules changed and platted lands could no longer be farmed, which is also somewhat typical. But due to the essence of time, we were able to get a rental agreement signed to provide to this committee, and then if this committee wishes, to the board. I didn't have it in time to email out. I can read it and then circulate it, of course, tomorrow, based on the furtherance of this conversation.
I don't know that you need to read it verbatim, but if you give us the highlight points and then share, then distribute it out, then we can, certainly read it on our own. But I'm not a farmer, so it's going to be a bit difficult for me to judge. You guys would have better insight on that. But if you give us the highlights, whether you believe it's reasonable, and then I guess any response on from Mary from a legal standpoint in our subdivision ordinances, whether we have any issues that we need to be aware of.
So the final cap on that is one of the things I had spoken with Mike about. Mary and I had a little bit of back and forth with this, and she had to do all the legwork to get the answer. The previous developer did not have a lease written or otherwise, and it's very typical for small developments like this where they find their chosen farmer to put the ground in crops so they don't get hit with the MS4 violations. If you're MS4 community or soil and water conservation, it hits for unvegetated land. So to our knowledge, nobody was paying or renting or leasing previously. They were just getting the use of it, and that quasi protected the landowner from these hits. So that being said, our local farmer is willing to provide an annual payment of $1,200 per year for use of the agricultural area, which again can be defined if we wish, which we should on Winges, with 25 acres more or less and outlined. So it's $1,200. They'll make a lump sum payment in addition to keeping the unfarmable parts of the properties mowed. That's their offerance and compensation. And then furthermore, they're requesting to understand that if they have crops that they put in and those acreage is sold or the crops are destroyed, the village, who's the landowner, would reimburse for the inputs, the cost of seed and time to put in. That's the gist of the short rental agreement we've been offered. Again, the village president had requested that we allow the renter to propose their version of an agreement, and that it would then come here and then go on to Mary for oversight and review. So that's what we have. I'll make it known quickly that yes, you would hear about local farmland renting for more money, but development land is not farmland. It's usually not as much an asset as a liability. There's a lot of danger, a lot of garbage out in these lands, and no easy farming, and the topsoil is usually garbage because it's been stripped. So I will give credit to the farmers that are willing to take it. They're taking an inherent risk. So, and this of course is a 1-year agreement. So that's what we have in front of us. I will say that this is an issue that for this part of this property, we should handle relatively quickly, because it's just the nature of farming. They're out doing it right now as we speak. Farmers, not on this land, but it will become more of a burden for anybody to do anything with if it doesn't progress quickly.
Mary, from any involvement you've had up to this point, or your knowledge of other ordinances or whatever, does this appear to be a viable thing that we can move forward on?
Well, I'll tell you what my concern is. I haven't seen the document yet, but I do farm leases all the time. And I don't know who drafted this farm lease, but if I'd have to look to see what the provisions are, because there normally are a lot more provisions in a farm lease, because you have to protect the landowner, at least from my perspective here. So I guess that remains to be seen. I will also comment that $1,200 a year is a pittance figure for farmland rental. I understand that it isn't true farmland, but if you're talking 25 acres for $1,200 a year, that's, like I said, just very, very low. I think we have an obligation to the public, because the village is obviously a public entity that owns this land, to make sure that we're making a reasoned decision in that regard. Again, I don't know who the farmer is. That doesn't matter, other than the fact of saying that someone's not going to do this, I don't think, just out of the goodness of their heart. They're going to think that they are going to get some sort of return. Also don't know what the value is. We have to consider in what the value is of this person mowing the other land. So I believe it could be doable, because this land that the village owns, it's just a matter of that it has to be proper terms in order to satisfy the village and to protect the village.
Could I ask a question? Mary, in the purchase of the land, when we paid the taxes, did that include the taxes that will be due in June and September of this year? Or will we be on the hook for those?
No, we will be, let's see, I'm just The only taxes that would have been included, let me just think here, as far as what we paid. I believe, yeah, because for the bills that aren't out yet, no, they wouldn't have been paid.
Okay.
So this was just the 20, basically the ones that were doing it were going to be sold for delinquent taxes. So yes, we will be on the hook for those as well.
In my experience with the lot that we purchased next door to the village office and the one that we purchased for Public Works, that first year when we make that purchase, it's a timing issue with the taxes, and we usually have to pay them. And then if I get my paperwork in August, they'll be exempt beyond that. So that's the only expense from my perspective that I know of, but I don't know what that amount is until we get those bills.
Well, I guess I would like to recommend, Chad, obviously, I'm sure that that's probably more of a gentleman's agreement that's been presented to you. So if you can forward that out to Mary so we can at least figure out what the minimum amount of, legal requirements we would have to get in there. And the other thing, I guess, obviously, if, we're in the planting season or whatever, we do have to get this thing done in a relatively short period of time if we're going to move forward. And then to the best of your ability, if we did not make some sort of an agreement with somebody to, take on the farming of it and maintain the property to be compliant with MS4, what are our costs going to be to the best of your ability to project as a village? Because again, what we may be looking at here is less of a revenue opportunity, more of a cost avoidance situation.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. And I had in those conversations with Frank. I mean, the man time that we would need to get this back up ship shape and the mowing, I'm aware of some of the contract mowing prices for just across the way at Winnebago's at First Midwest Group's properties. I honestly was thinking we were $10,000 to $12,000 just in man time for the obligation to start getting that property mowed and the increased man hours. So that was, I believe, what we never talked numbers from our side with it, but Frank and myself had spoken, and I have shared with Frank that I anticipated $10,000 to $12,000 in our man hour time to start mowing and rough mowing and getting those areas back under control and in a compliable space. So that's, obviously easy for me to palate the rationale of it, but I don't have any, I'm not arguing, Mary's point's valid, and if she does these and seen them, we would hope that, in short order, Frank or yourself could give her the permission to draft against this one and we present it back. And if it protects the village as the lesser and the lessee is satisfied and whatever language needs to be in, we put in, and if these folks are willing to move forward, good. And if not, then we're in another spot. that $2,000 number, that's just the unmowables outside of the 25 acres. So if the 25 acres doesn't get managed, we've got another issue. And there's some other issues with this property that we need to dole through. So
If I'm not a farmer again, but do you get a rough idea of window of opportunity before they have to probably start hitting the ground with plows?
Yeah, it's really by this board meeting, the April board meeting, a week from today. That's for real. They're in the fields now doing anhydrous and fertilizer, and if the ground temperature comes up for planting, people will be doing that in 14 days or less.
So we can bring it to the board. Well, we can have it on the board agenda and it just won't come from committee, and we can discuss it and vote on it then. The only suggestion that I have is to we'll cover the cost of my suggestion here, of course, cover the cost of the reimbursement of the seed that we sell it. to a max of the 1,200 or something less than that. So that if we do sell it, we're not giving them, $7,000 in cost. I really don't know the cost of seeds in general though, but having some sort of maximum reimbursement in the plan.
Can I just give a quick suggestion, just because I have some knowledge on that? Your typical input cost per acre is roughly $200 an acre for planting corn. That includes fertilizer, seed, all of that. And so if you're doing 25 acres, you're right at, 200 times 25, $5,000, right? Something like that. So $5,000. What I would do is just put a provision in the lease that if the land is to be developed, the developer would reimburse them at $200 an acre or whatever they agree to for their input costs. And that way, it's not even the village's responsibility. The person who develops it would just have to know, hey, you have to pay X amount back per acre.
Or they delay it a year,
Right.
let the guy get the crops out of the ground, so.
Yeah, that's what I've seen in other scenarios.
But yeah, I think probably the short thing there, yes, I don't think we have enough knowledge to render, opinion on go or no go, other than to get the document over to Mary, put some thought into that or whatever, and we make this an agenda item for the board meeting.
And I can tell you that the land use agreement that I use is one that is put out by the University of Illinois Department of Agriculture. So a lot of the farmers are used to that agreement. So we try to use it a fairly standard one, but of course then change certain terms accordingly. So, and also Seth, is this anything where there would be any spreading of lime involved?
Could be, yeah.
Because that's also, another expense that sometimes they look for reimbursement from the landowner, and for
that would be-
$1,200, we don't want to get into that.
Right, yep, no, that's kind of why I was thinking that, you figure out just what their input cost per acre is estimated to be, and you include that in there, and that would be inclusive of seed and fertilizer and, potash, whatever they're putting out there, lime, et cetera.
Well, and I guess the thing is too that there's got to be some risk in that regard on the renter's part when they're not paying fair market value to use the land. Assuming that, well, I know that $1,200 a year is not fair market value even for bad farmland. So I'm just saying that, that I think your idea is a good one of having some sort of cap number that the developer would then use, but that they wouldn't be able to come back and say, but, oh, wait a minute, I spread lime. So now we need to add that on. We just don't want to get into that.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the tricky part about this one is just trying to figure out the value of the land being utilized versus the offset for the maintenance of the non-productive land. And
Right.
Any other questions or comments? Just please circulate that over. Everybody, please take a good hard look at it, and we'll put it on as an item of discussion for the board meeting next week. Item number 13, 2021 street project.
You want me to go, Chad?
Yeah, this is for you, Seth.
Okay. Not sure if it made the agenda or not, but there was quite competitive bidding for the Elida Street project in a good way. Bids from Rock Road, Curran, Helm, William Charles, and Martin, which are kind of our repeat offenders. And the low bid this year was Rock Road at $288,452.30 cents, which is significantly under what we had estimated. I don't have the estimate with me, but I believe that we were pushing six figures underneath for savings. And what the majority of the other bids were right around 340,000 on average. So the Rock Roads bid was $50,000 less than everybody else's. At this time, there's really we went through and there's no glaring differences between pay items. So it appears that Rock Road was not, bidding in a manner that, it's not like they missed something here, we believe, and they don't either.
This is fresh in my mind only because when I was in here in the village office today, I was signing some minutes and I remember reading this. So when I was signing the December minutes and the Fairground cost estimate for this project, basically was $514,000, item or whatever. So obviously that included some of the engineering fees in there, but obviously that's a very favorable number.
Yeah. Yeah. Was it 514?
Well, I'd have to take the engineering fee off of it or whatever.
Yeah, I think if you take the engineering fees off, contingency off. But yeah, either way, it's significantly underneath, especially with the oil prices that, we're seeing right now. That's some really good asphalt tonnage pricing.
Now, there was some communication that I don't know if all the committee members saw that between Chad and Frank and Seth, and I was copied on it, is there was a recommendation that if we went with the Rock Road, that we might want to consider an additional quality control measure just to make sure that this project was there. What was the estimate on that quality control service?
We didn't actually get an estimate. I would, if I had to put a number on it, I'd say it's in the neighborhood of $5,000. And we recommend that you do that with any contractor. I guess and sometimes villages or municipalities elect to go for that based on who they're working with. But sometimes if they've got a higher level of trust, they elect to forego it. If this is a contractor that the village is a little bit more worried about, then I would definitely recommend having that quality assurance materials testing company, either a Geocon or a testing services co-op on board. Roughly 5,000 is kind of what I would anticipate, and they could even be less than that. Because really, I think they would probably be more interested in testing the HMA more so than the concrete.
And being there's a $45,000 gap between that and the next closest competitor, that even incurring that additional expense to increase our confidence or whatever still makes it quite favorable.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is with the bids coming in where they're at and the unit costs or whatever, it provides a golden opportunity to probably tie in some adjacent work that would be tie in very naturally with this project, which saves us some headaches down the line as well.
I know we've used Rock Road in the past. This wasn't the one where we almost had to sue them because they didn't complete the project within the time frame, is it? Or is it? Okay. So how is $5,000 going to hold their feet to the fire? We had pretty serious provisions in there to the tune of I know it was a bigger project, but it was like, if I recall, at least $70,000 that they were threatened with being fined. So
I was going to say 78,000.
okay.
So I think we're on the same track.
Yeah, I'm just doing this from memory, but
this $5,000 really wouldn't. The other, liquidated damage and everything will still have to be in. This is just to verify that, if we're supposed to get X number of inches of thick of blacktop, that we're verifying that. So this is over and above all those other typical contingencies that will normally be in the agreement.
So there would still be the liquidated damages. Okay.
Yeah, this is just to just verify that, again, if you put a driveway in at your own house, they're supposed to give you 2 inches and they only gave you 1.5 inches. How are you ever going to know that? This is just to try to validate that they're meeting the specifications that the bid was.
Yeah, and we'll be on site to handle that part of it. The materials testing will actually be like a physical testing to make sure that it's compacted to a 95% density type of deal, and verify that their mix design is right, things like
So then I sensed that you were Fairground's recommendation that we would move forward with the bid submitted by Rock Road.
That would be the recommendation.
Seth, are you gonna put together for us a tally that includes the contingency? And then, also I was gonna request from the committee discretionary spending up to another $25,000 for ancillary work due to the low bid amount.
I get, what are you looking for, Chad? I've got the bid tab here. Are you looking for something more?
Well, when we go to full board for approval, we've got the 288 plus engineering, which price point has changed, and then also contingency. I'm just guessing Mike's gonna want an end number amount, and I was of course gonna try to use this time as we had talked. We felt that we could do that stretch of Runyard Street up to Church Street based on unit pricing for not to exceed 25,000 additional dollars.
Okay. All right, so I mean, I can do that right here. So you've got 25,000 plus your bid price. You know, if you take the 288, 452.30, and you just say, let's take for contingency purposes 5%. That leaves you at 302,875 plus 25,000 is 327,875. So your construction costs, and then I would add another 5,000 in for your materials testing, which leaves you at 332,875. I don't believe that you technically need to approve of the construction engineering amount because that was already approved as part of the resolution that was passed. So I think that should encompass all of your construction dollar amount, unless you have additional items that you need to include. Is that right?
I think you're right. I think since we were under, the resolution would have covered it all. I'm just guessing now that Mike's gonna want to put a number, but I'm with you. You don't have to add your engineering now that it's less.
Yeah. Yeah, so the total construction dollar amount that you would be approving, including materials testing, you know, contingency, and then the additional $25,000 that Chad is requesting for Runyard Street, that total would be $332,875.
And I just rounded that up to 333,000.
Yeah.
Is there anything time sensitive about this project for completion of the work? The reason I ask that is because the last time that Rock Road was used, it wasn't weeks behind, it was months.
Not to my knowledge. I believe that
Okay.
from the time that
We have the standard MFT timeframe though, right, Seth, with we have
Yeah,
a
there's
calendar day and a temperature threshold. MFT jobs do have a cutoff, Mary. And we may have, I can't remember right now due to see what the contract said. I don't know if MFT has it, but there is a fail safe in MFT jobs that, do you know off the top of your head, Seth, is it like a November date or so many collective days that are below such and such temperature, 45 and dropping or something like that?
Yeah, there's IDOT standard specifications that prevent you from putting down asphalt in certain weather, whether that be temperature and then obviously time frame as well. So you're covered in that regard. And then written into the contract, there is a number of days, I can't remember if it's 60 or 90 days, that technically, once the contract has been approved and executed and they have the go-ahead, they have that many days before liquidated damages really can ensue.
Right, but in that case with Rock Road, they got several extensions for that liquidated damages clause. So it wasn't 60 or 90 days, it was months.
Yeah, yep.
How many years ago was this previous event?
I'm guessing, was it like 5, 6?
Over 10.
Oh, okay,
I was gonna say 10 years ago.
okay.
And I don't know what Rock Road was like 10 years ago. I can tell you over the last 3 years, 3 to 4 years, Rock Road has gotten every single contract for South Beloit and for Roscoe. And we have not had timeline issues. I mean, obviously there's not a project that doesn't have something that comes up that you have to work through, whether that be a change order or getting something repaired that wasn't necessarily perfect. But as far as, month delays, we have not seen any of that.
Well, that's good to hear. We must have scared them.
Yeah. you may
Or they
have-
got different people.
Either that or over 10 years, hopefully they got rid of the bad apple problem.
Yep.
I looked and we paid them in 2010, so it was 11 years ago.
Sally, what would I know we were taking some money out of the road project and the other out of MFT. Do you know what the account number we would be looking at here?
Well, based on the numbers that we've just been talking about, I think it'll all come out of MFT. We have it right now. So that's really good news.
Okay, what's that account number?
15,46850.
15-46-850.
Yes.
So I guess I'd like to call for a motion to recommend approval of the Rock Road Company's bid, plus additional contingency and additional add-on work not to exceed $333,000 from account number 15-46-850.
Jeremy Grimm will make that motion.
Stan Malagranda will second.
And just so everybody here is clear, that additional cost for the materials testing will be funneled through Fairbrand. It won't come from the contractor. So if you see our fee amount go above what we were, approved for, that's the reason why. That we'll contract them. We've got master sub-consultant agreements with those companies. Or you can contract them yourself too, if you wanted to.
So really, we would be so again, we would have to put the engineering account number in there to pick up that 5,000. What would be that account number, Sally?
15,46502.
Jeremy, would you like to amend your motion on the account numbers so that way there the $5,000 estimated quality control cost would be added to the engineering and not part of the actual construction?
Yes, I would.
Stan, would you agree to a second that amendment?
Yes.
Any other questions, comments? Roll call vote. Jeremy,
Yes.
Stan,
Yes.
and Mike votes yes. So that will be a board agenda item.
Now, the other thing Chad had talked about was the discretionary spending, which wasn't part of that. I know Sally wanted to talk about that as well. Do we want to hit that now or do we want to wait until?
I was going to pick that up here in a couple items.
Okay.
So item number 14, capital equipment spending. Chad had Kelly forward out to the committee a couple situations on replacement of a half-ton truck and a 3/4 ton truck, and provided information with both capital purchase as well as leasing costs. Well, 10-second break here. Just while, in case Seth wants to depart, any other questions relative to anything relative to Fairgram Engineering? That in the event he wants to slide out the door, we'll cover anything that he's got before he does that. Hearing none, if you want to slide out, you're free to go.
I
You're leaving.
appreciate that. I've got another one I gotta get to.
Okay, thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Good seeing you again, physically and not just virtually.
I know, right? See you guys next week. Virtually.
Okay, dokie.
Thanks, everybody.
See you, Seth.
I was able to interpret your mind there.
Yeah. We're on the same wavelength. You knew I had to get somewhere else.
Okay, Chad, go ahead.
They had some discussion, and as we're looking through the budget and budget management, and as doing the budget this year, a lot of our small inland marina are mid-duty pickup trucks, service truck styles. A couple of them have gone past our planned depreciation time points. So the resale value is substantially less. Their maintenance requirements are substantially higher. And as we've been looking and as things have changed in the world, we have some neighboring communities, Rockton being one of them, and a few others, some school districts have started, and also the change in the state bid program, which is a totally different program right now. It's a little harder to acquire the trucks and equipment that we need. And we have found a local dealership that does a municipal leasing option or outright purchase. Due to Friday being a holiday, didn't get this stuff distributed, so we're not going to ask for action tonight, but we would just ask that the committee members look through and get an opinion on the idea, not for every piece of equipment, but for these unique pieces of equipment. We do feel pretty strongly towards the idea of leasing. These two are more the standard pickup truck style of trucks with toolboxes. One is with snowplow, one is without. But there were a couple lease options, 3 and 5 year. Taking the hard look at the budget, we think it would provide for a better depreciation budget. And because we do have some large items that you can't lease that are going to need to be purchased in the near future, our big front end loader, payloader, and our agricultural tractor that also plows snow and pulls the batwing mower. We don't have as many options for leasing for those styles of equipment. We do think that would maybe free up the budget money. We're all ears to hear opinions, but we do have some hardline numbers here that we asked the committee to review. Right now, it's pretty simple. We're in an outright purchase of, after trade-in, the smaller standard pickup truck would be about $35,000, or you could do a 3-year lease right around $6,000, or a 5-year lease for just a small amount difference. Likewise for the 3/4 ton. It's in its infancy. I talked to Mike about 3 or 4 weeks ago, had a little discussion about it. We looked into it a little further. We don't have the time invested yet that I wanted to get in to make sure our upfits, our price packages for our snowplows and toolboxes, making sure they're competitive. That is part of the thing. You're not just getting a truck. Our lighting package, strobe lights, the toolboxes, trailer hitch, that's $5,000 give or take. If you throw a snowplow in that mix, you're up above $11,000, $11,000 to $12,000, depending on which snowplow style you go with. So those upfits add pretty big pricing. But that's all capable of being wrapped into the lease. If the board or committee, and I would like to have Jeremy take this to finance too and come back with feedback, now that you do have documentation that could be dissected, we're all ears, but we are looking to move at the next committee meeting with the action item before the existing equipment depreciates out any further. And these two particular ones were fully planned for in the budget process for full replacement. It would just be an augmentation or a softening to the hit on the budget if we were to switch to that lease option on these items.
Chad, whether, if we made a decision to move forward with these trucks, whether it's a purchase or a lease, are these stock units? Are they to be ordered? What's the time frame that you're looking at?
Yeah, that's very, very tough right now is what we're hearing, that a lot of the manufacturing plants are shut down. And the custom order trucks that we've typically done where we strip certain things down, vinyl floors, lesser amenities and things, they can't even build those right now. They say they're not doing that. I don't have a great answer. We've been asking that same question. We're told if we move forward, they'll look harder to see what's out there in pools and find something like, and then the price would wiggle down or up depending on which way that particular truck was outfitted for the chassis. So right now, the way these direct invoices, these would be built trucks. So it would be several months at the earliest before we seen them. 4 months at the earliest for them to get in our hands. We're just in those infant talks that said, hey, if there are ones out there that are relatively similar, that have a couple of changes, we would be willing to talk about them. They all carry the municipal discount, which is sizable, the fleet discount, which is sizable. If we're the endpoint user, we realize the savings, but these two items that you've seen quoted, they're not trucks that are on a lot in Freeport right now.
3 quick questions for you. If it does take, I don't know, 6 months for these trucks to come in, are they going to keep the depreciation, what they're willing to give us, the same? Or because obviously we're going to need 6 months more of depreciation on these trucks.
Yeah, that would depend on what our trucks look like going in, and if there was more wear and tear on something, if there was damage, you'd be surprised at the things they do and don't like to see for trade-in value. I think their trade-in values are a little low. We had this discussion, and it's basically all a we'll see, but the vendors fully understand if we sign on the dotted line, then the buck stops. They know they're getting a truck with a few more miles, and we would have compensated by accepting a slightly lower trade-in value. We try to behave. If we knew a truck was getting traded in, we would try to use it less, but we use what we have. So,
would we have the capability of selling the trucks outside of the trade-in?
We can. It's a longer process. We do have to do the sealed bid, which does take time. We have to advertise them, and then we have to take our time and allow people to see them. We've done it. We've done it both ways. We're fully capable. There's a cost to advertise, and then our time is absorbed by having to meet with people to show them the truck. Some are serious, some are not. Way back when in government low bids, they had to take the highest bid. That's no longer the law. The law is it's got to be a relevant bid, but people used to buy things for ridiculous money, and people still think that happens. So we waste 2 hours showing a guy a truck and he puts a $50 bid in, or $52.99 bid. So we've progressed a little bit away from that, but we wouldn't be opposed to it. If we thought that one of the trucks had a little higher value, we would definitely say, we're not going to trade it in, we'll sell it outright. Or if you do sell to another municipality, I think that changes some of the advertising rules and what have you. But we can sell it outright. There is criteria that has to be met if you do it.
I guess I guess one of the tricks you might run into is the timing of the event, you know, when you're not certain when they hit the ground. And, you know, I guess even though the traded value or the resale to a personal purchaser might be a little bit higher, I guess if you lock it in on the agreement where they're taking the risk of further depreciation, like I said, a lot of moving pieces on it.
Absolutely. I know this isn't your lane, but does this company that you're looking at happen to also lease police cars? And if so, would there be more of a discount, as in like you bundle more things together?
The answer to the police cars is yes. They do lease any chassis, and I do like where you're going with that because of the turnaround in that department. I think it'd be very practical to do it over there. We have asked about bulk discount. It didn't sound like our volume, twosies, threesies, would meet that discount. But all that being said, the government allowance is quite large. I mean, just on the own. And then just to please the committee, this is Bacher and Freeport, but it's through a municipal leasing vendor that they have there that has done this for, like I say, Orangeville School District, Freeport School District, Highland Community College. I think they have a couple of commercial users as well. I do believe that City of Rockton, that's got probably 1.5 times what we have for inventory of vehicles. I think they went with Hertz or one of the other large leasing companies. We do want to get somewhere where we can get service. That's been a real hiccup on our previous models and vehicles to get in dealer service, because the way state bid used to be, we would drive all the way to Springfield to get a Ford chassis. Well, Rock River Ford or Durham Ford isn't quite as happy that they're working on a truck that you didn't buy from them. So Bacher's pretty close, pretty short jaunt. We're not tied down or dead set. We think the concept is good, and we're just looking to get a feel of how much harder we should work in this direction if the committee was in favor of it. And we would be prepared in May then with rock solid pricing and a few more answers.
So
Sally, with all the, I guess, the flow of funds from the last stimulus bill, I mean, how does that affect the budget? I mean, obviously on a lease, you're only paying the finance charges on the differential between the capitalized cost and residual value. So, you know, it's not as much as if you were financing the whole vehicle, but I guess, you know, 5.25%, still 5.25%. So how does that funding and what can that funding be used for? Any thoughts on that?
Well, I believe we have dedicated the majority of it to economic development. And I don't have the exact number of what's left over. I could get that number.
Wasn't there a sizable amount of funding in the more recently passed bill that's going to be flowing through?
I haven't gotten assurances to what that has to be used for. The last time I talked to Frank, he didn't have a clear answer either. So I just haven't, we have no idea.
I believe it's earmarked mostly for water and sewer style projects, and I did talk to Frank about it in relation to the rate study a week or so ago. And if we were not to be awarded the grant that we've invested $140,000 in engineering towards, that we would try to put some of that money towards that purpose to get some return on our engineering investment. And likewise on that, the larger one that I believe is around $340,000, I think that's going to come over several years, not in short order, but I could be wrong.
Well, no, again, there's a lot of unknowns, and I guess that's why I say we'll just, and I guess the other thing is if we try to, you know, finish this package up for May. Maybe we know a little bit more by then, but I guess more importantly, from Jeremy or Stan's perspective, any overall opinion, neutral, favorable, unfavorable on the concept of the leasing?
I don't see any problem with it. Obviously, we want to get some more stuff, some more information. And if we're not going to get any more of a discount from police, from adding the police in, we don't need to wait for the police committee if they wanted to do it as well. It's something to definitely look into, but we can move forward from the public works side without police meeting and them discussing as well.
Yeah, I think they're kind of mutually exclusive, or, so.
Well, yet, one thing too, Chad, is to talk with Nick, because we have been looking into doing the leasing of police vehicles. And if they have an opportunity where you can get, per se, a bulk issue, I know that he's checked with a lot of the Hertz and stuff like that. And it was a matter of there wasn't enough vehicles in order to be able to get a decent discount on it. But Nick would have that information, and I know he's working tomorrow. But that would be, leasing with what he had said is a better option than purchase, and because of the maintenance issue and the possibility of upgrading in 2 or 3 years. And they know that vehicle with a trade-in type situation. But, hey, leasing is a better option from what I hear. So I'd get a hold of Nick tomorrow to find out what information he's acquired and what he's looking for, and to see if Bacher is going to be able to help out.
Will do.
So Chad, I guess the consensus I'm hearing is you're not wasting your time by continuing to, evaluate this particular path. And if we can try to have everything wrapped up and ready to go for the May committee meeting, and then hopefully make a final determination to take to the board.
If you don't mind me saying, when I go to treasurers institutes and conventions, many municipalities do this. The treasurers are all in favor of it. They have good experiences. A lot of them obviously have bigger fleets than we do, so they have an easier time. But it's definitely something that's done all the time. We have these sinking funds, and part of establishing that was to try to come up with, annual payments instead of trying to come up with the costs of these vehicles all at once. And we're kind of lined up to do it if we can just get an agency to do what we want.
And I did some quick math on everything. Where you can get blindsided on a lease is if you significantly exceed the annual mileage. And I think with the mileage that we had on the 2 vehicles that are in discussion right now, we were well within that 15,000 mile per year lease limit. And that is where you really got to watch out for, because if you look at the penalties by turning in a vehicle with excess mileage, you can get really hammered on that. So just kind of keep that in mind on there. And obviously, they only had a 0.25% difference between the rate for the 3-year versus the 5-year. So there was no real significant penalty there. And I think when the depreciation on the vehicle, they backed off a little bit on the 5-year versus the 3-year. So one kind of offsets the other. So yeah, I would say that it looks like it's probably viable. So if you want to kind of finish up your numbers, I don't think you're wasting your time looking at it.
Thank you. Oops, wrong button.
Okay, the next item on there, Rock River Water Reclamation District. I know that Frank and Mary and Chad and I had discussion on some of the open issues. I guess, Mary, from your perspective, do you know what you interpreted as next steps? I'd have to go back through my notes to look at that. It seems like ages ago. It was only a few weeks.
Yeah, no, I hear you. What I had done is I looked at the notes as well. What I wanted to ask, because I swore to myself that I thought I had forwarded to everyone a copy of everything from RRWRD. I had that in my notes from the last meeting, but I couldn't find the email. So what I'm asking is, do you have a copy of everything from RRWRD as far
Right.
as their proposal?
Frank sent out an email with all the documents that he was able to get his fingers on.
Yes, I did see that as well. But one was the 7/22/20 letter that had come from Attorney Fitzgerald. So I may just forward that again just to make sure that everybody's got everything. But with that having been said, what I was going to do, and I can tell you I honestly haven't gotten there yet, was going to look through everything and kind of put together what I saw as of the list of sort of a synopsis for us to then have the next meeting to further discuss things, both based on what came out of our meeting as well as what our RWRD had proposed. So that's on my agenda for beginning of next week.
Okay, well, I think that kind of, it's a good spot at there, and as many topics as we've had today, I think we'd probably, have exhausted some of our energy. So yeah, if you'll do that, and then once you get that, we look at that next month, we'll go ahead and schedule another meeting to take the next steps on that. So as I look down here, like item number 23, I guess, obviously, a lot of the time that we spent tonight was on, how to maintain that land in the interim. And did I not see that there's also a meeting scheduled to discuss that overall topic? We have that on the calendar somewhere?
I don't have my calendar back here with me, unfortunately, but I thought we were doing that sometime, or Frank was looking at a May date, I thought, or
Yeah.
April date, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't know whether I put this down there to hold it or somebody sent something out, but it looks like there's a Tuesday, April 27th at 3 o'clock.
Okay, that sounds right.
Yeah, so I guess obviously, that'll bring that up. So any issues relative to, where we need to go and how do we need to handle it and development and everything else. Certainly, hopefully we can take this other item and kind of, do as much as we can between now and the board meeting to see if we do have to do something there, whether it makes sense or not, that we got that piece. I don't think that can wait till the 27th. Otherwise, I think planting season is probably missed.
Right.
Okay, then the other item we have, Sally asked that we take under employee input, spending approval limits, and the purchasing policy. I don't think we have anything else on the previous items to that, so we can jump down to number 26. You want to make some comments there, Sally, or?
I did email that purchasing policy to everyone at the meeting. Currently, all the department heads have a limit to what they can approve, up to 1,500. And I believe this is dated, especially for the Director of Public Works. Everything purchased that's approved by Chad is more than that. And it becomes a little redundant in our process. Also in this process, I figured out that fourth bullet that talks about purchases for items greater than 10,000, that the current statute for that, it's actually 25,000. So things keep progressing in the statutes, but we're still back in 2007 or whatever with our policy. So I'm open to suggestions. I know Chad said that he was going to discuss it with you, Mike, and we would love to upgrade this policy in finance.
Do you have a recommendation?
Well, I mean, is 10,000 too high for Public Works?
I guess just
Everything-
so I'm clear, Sally, are you saying that for whatever that amount is, that individual, that department head could spend that amount without board approval? Is that right?
No,
No?
they're just allowed to make the purchase, but it wouldn't be paid for without the board approval.
But then the village would be on the hook for it if they've purchased something, correct? The only reason I bring that up is that, and maybe you've already talked to Frank about this, but I just know Frank's policy has been, at least in the past, and I'm not saying that he wouldn't want to move any of these numbers by any means, but he really likes things to go before the board for approval. That's just kind of been his policy. And just like with Public Works, that statute has changed. It went from 10,000, 20,000 to 25,000. Historically, we have gotten competitive bidding for a lot of different things that wouldn't necessarily require it. So I just throw that out there that you might want to consult Frank in this discussion to see where he's going.
I think in general, that's probably a good idea, but if you got something that's leaking massive amounts of water, we don't have time for board approval. We got to probably get a little bit more realistic on some of them. And,
Well, and I think what it's been in the past is that, and Chad can correct me if I'm wrong, or anyone else that had something that was that price, but that, then I think they would talk to Frank and he'd say, yeah, do it, and then get the board to affirm it. But just and he's one, obviously that's one voice there. And he doesn't vote on certain things except in the case of a tie. But I just throw that out there because I just know that's been his policy.
yeah, I guess, Sally, if you want to, I guess, between Chad and my conversation and looking at a lot of what these bills are or whatever, if you want to bounce around a finance committee or whatever, I guess my recommendation of what might be considered would be is to take the spending approval of the Director of Public Works up to 5,000, chairman of the committee 7,500, and still at this point in time leave the $10,000 what the president currently is, would be my current opinion. Not to go too drastic on a major improvement upward. I'll be honest, when I got to approve something, generally I'm taking Chad's opinion on it because he knows more about it than I do. I mean, it is beneficial to have a quick conversation on something, and so to get that verbal approval or whatever, that we've kind of hashed it out, and if it is discretionary or it's urgent or is essential, I think even if the approval levels are changed, I think those conversations probably will continue. The only opinion I would have contrarian to what you sent on the email is I think there's probably some situations where I think purchase orders should be required, where you say that where it's redundant. Obviously, if we have a proposal from somebody that really outlines what the things are, for example, even this road project where you got a very detailed proposal, obviously when we agree to that, having a purchase order would be redundant. But if you got something that you're ordering or whatever, I always find it good practice that there's some sort of a document that's sent over to make sure that we didn't intend to order a left and we got it right because we didn't have a document that had a little bit more formality to it or whatever. And certainly email correspondence or some type of thing in writing would eliminate those miscommunications or whatever. But just my thought. But I guess what I would suggest, if you want to take that back to the finance committee, that would be my recommendation. Is the directors goes up from 1,500 to 5,000. The chairman goes from 5,000 to 7,500. The 10,000 remains as is.
Well, I think that would be a good compromise, and it would be a way for us to see if that would, help with the current problem. I'm open to definitely the 5,000. With the purchase orders, we have so much approval going on already. It's just one more layer of me trying to track down Public Works and backfilling these purchase orders.
Well, in my perspective, it's not so much from an approval process, it's making sure there's not a miscommunication between us and the supplier.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where I'm coming from. And, he's got the approval, and we, yes, a purchase order, to approve something at $4,200, if he's got spending authority, it's 5,000 is redundant, but just somehow to make sure that, well, gee, we never ordered that, or you didn't order this, or you ordered that, but I supplied that. That's the only thing I'm talking about, is trying to minimize. And I don't know how many of those we might have here or whatever. I know that, is with our own business or whatever, we instituted some of that in there because, wait a minute, to eliminate those disagreements or whatever. And it's not a huge deal. I can go with it or without it, but yeah, from a spending authority standpoint, yeah, I would agree with you. Those are redundant, but it's also very easy, even again, the email is certainly suitable as long as, like I say, you've asked, hey, here's an invoice, you approve it, and, we acknowledge that approval as long as there's a track record. That, to me, that meets the same criteria. But so again, that's my 2 cents on the subject. Jeremy, any thoughts?
I assumed you talked to Chad about what he thought the limit was, and you guys agreed on the 5?
Well, Chad, I think you and I were probably, at least for the next step, that we were kind of in agreement on that. Is that correct?
It's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I know you'd like more, but we'll take it in smaller steps.
So
It also helps the treasurer, for the record.
So 2 questions with that. One was, if that bottom number increases to 25,000, that's obviously gonna give us a lot more room. But is the 1,500 to 5,000, will that cover a lot more items, Chad, that you wouldn't have to continue to do, or really are we only just gaining like one less thing for approval, and really it's not going to make any difference until we set 10,000? Now we don't have to worry about doing all this extra stuff.
I would probably say, just off the cuff, that there's probably a half a dozen conversations per year that Chad and I have in between that gap that is 1,500 to 5,000, where he's exceeded his 1,500 and it requires mine. And we just had one of those for the JP Electric at 5,830. In that particular case, that one's still going to require the same level of approval now, because neither one of us still could approve that particular. Well, no, I would take mine up to 7,500. Chad would have still had to come to me, but I would have been able to approve that. But I tend to see a lot, like, again, the other one for JP Electric was $1,700. So that one there, he and Sally could have resolved it. I wouldn't have had him become involved, and we would have been able to get a more timely payment onto the vendor.
And do we have any issue on, and this is from your opinion here, Mike, having different maximums per department? So for example, Chad compared to Jeff.
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
So in regards to finance side, if we were to take this documentation, instead of saying it's 5,000 for all department heads, do you have a problem with it is, say, 5,000 for Chad for Public Works, but it's 3,000 for police?
My opinion would be is you give all department heads the same.
Okay.
I was going to say that I rarely see this happen in police or admin. Kelly's been ordering computers and big equipment, and hardly any of it even meets the $3,000 mark. But Chad can order, I don't know, 4 meters and we're there. It's like.
Yeah, well, there's no doubt the ticket items he's spending on are much, much higher. And again, I guess the thing about it is, there's a lot of trust in the operation that we have. You know, if we had different people on there, you don't know that we want to constantly be changing parameters based on the people or whatever. I think we need to kind of look at a very consistent approach, and, you know, we're very fortunate that we got responsible individuals making these decisions, and if that weren't the case, we might have to ratchet it back down. But again, I personally don't have a problem if they were different, but my recommendation would be they be on par with one another.
Then you don't have an issue of employee morale and some dissension about why does someone have more spending power than someone else when they're bald department heads.
You know, now obviously this will ultimately be, you know, if finance agrees with it, it'll be come under the board, and we'll have a chance to chime in or whatever, but you know, that's kind of my opinion at this point.
Absolutely. And Mayor, to your point though, I mean, one might be spending $20,000 on this, and someone else, the most expensive thing they spend is $500. So while feelings, I suppose, could get hurt, they're not going to spend, they're not going to go buy a brand new car.
No, I understand. But maybe even if you got employee input on that issue. Department head.
Yes, and that's why we're going to talk with the other ones as well.
I think logically, the finance committee talks about it, and then the next administrative meeting with the department heads, you guys come to a consensus at it.
Correct.
Because they may say, I never spend that much money, I don't need it, and that's fine. But at least it's.
About it is, even if they're empowered to do it, doesn't mean they can't reach out to a peer and just, hey, you think this is a good deal? You know, so.
Yep.
Sounds good.
When you think about it, though, we ask the employees to create these budgets, and then we restrict every single thing that they spend in $1,500 increments, and then it goes through the treasurer, potentially then the chairperson, and then again to the board. It's a lot. I mean, we have a lot of checks and balances already for something that's already been approved on an annual basis. You know, it has a cap. So that's just my opinion. I just wanted to get you guys thinking about it.
I think it's sometime in the future, the levels may go higher, but I think if we do it a little bit mentally, those that are a little less comfortable with it, you know, we just continuous improvement, continuous progress.
Absolutely. All right. I'm good with that.
Okay, does anybody have anything else on any of the other items, or can we defer them to the future? Okay, I am not available on the first Monday of May as we traditionally were, so I would like to propose our next Public Works meeting would be on Wednesday, April the 28th. Does that work for everybody?
I can do that if it is at 5:30. If we wanted to do a 4, well, I suppose it's track starts that day, so I guess it's gonna be for the rest of the year. Could we do 4:45 that day?
Jenny, not. We'll split the difference. 4:45.
4:45 on April 28th.
Yep.
Okay.
And again, I apologize again that the little miscommunication between the intended start time today and the actual start time. So do I have a motion for adjournment?
Stan Milligranda makes that motion.
We don't want to keep hanging out? I guess Jeremy Graham will second that motion.
Okay, roll call. Stan,
Yes.
Jeremy,
Yes.
and Mike votes yes, and so we will adjourn at 7:25 p.m. Now,
Well, have a good evening.
Now, I wish I had designed that information where it takes all the conversation and puts it on a piece of paper so I wouldn't have to go home and type up these minutes before I catch an early morning flight.
Oh. All right, well, travel safe.
Have a
All
good
right.
evening, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Good night.
Chad left before I could remind him